So I'm back. So this is like my job now. Pretty much. Just for example, this is my downloads. If I wasn't talking, there would be about 7 during a day, and now it's a lot more. So just by talking, it causes more downloads, and it's starting. I don't know if it's going to build. With any luck, maybe it'll start building, but every time I think I get momentum, it drops off. So like I'll think it's starting to grow, and it never grows. Anyway, but so I wanted to clarify something. I wanted to clarify something. Back when there was a guy, there was a hostage. This is about 1987, 1988. A man went over and got himself shot. He was a missionary, Christian missionary over in the Middle East, and back when they were taking hostages and stuff. You young people don't know what this was, but anyway, during Reagan, there were Christian hostages that got taken by the PLO or something like that, and that was back when there was a barrack or something that got blown up, and 200 Americans died. That was during Reagan, and anyway, so this guy got himself killed, and it said the newspaper, the very cynical British newspaper, said he loved his enemies, and God said war is servicemen competing. And boy, I've seen a lot of Game of Thrones and stuff, and there's a warrior code of conduct, and I think if you love your enemy and he's a warrior, he doesn't want you to walk up and say shoot. If you walk up to a warrior and say shoot me, he's gonna go ew. He might do it, but that's kind of like a gay person. A gay person walks up and says shoot me. It's kind of I don't know how to describe that. I know that mindset. Kind of. It's off your rocker here. If you walk up and say, "Just shoot me." Anyway, so a warrior wants to fight in battle. So if you love a warrior, that means you fight him in battle and you respect him, and you treat him as a warrior. That's what a warrior wants. So it's not loving. It's not really love to go up to a warrior and say, just shoot me. He might do it, but I think he wants to be respected as a warrior. And anyway, so that's just an interesting. So if you ever hear a Christian saying, I don't know, get yourself slaughtered by, and that's how you love enemies. And that's not. They might oblige you, but I don't think that's not really what you want to do. So there's kind of a lot of ways that a sheep can get confused, and there are, it's when you're young, that basically you're kind of a sheep or something. I don't want to, some people, I think it's natural to not want to be a sheep. If somebody said, "Oh, this makes you a sheep," then you probably don't want to be a sheep. But sometimes there's benefits, I think, if you can be in a ignorant state of, when they educated the savages, they said, "Why did you educate me? I would have gone to heaven if you hadn't done that," or something like that. Possibly being a sheep can put you in a state of mind that benefits you, but I don't know. Anyway, not that this has any relevance to. Yeah, I was gonna say, if there's, God basically said, I asked him if the world was perfectly just. He asked if I was calling him lazy. I think it's really important. Hell, eternal fire is very scary. Maybe it's good to maybe you need the thought of eternal fire because let's just say the last 5 years of your life could be hell, and if you should fear that like you fear eternal fire. In other words, maybe belief in eternal fire is good if it, because it, like, I have some belief that pleasures and pains balance. I don't really know for sure, but if that was true, you'd have a really hard time convincing a young person to go easy, to go easy on pleasures, because I think that's when you resort to not telling them the truth. Anyway, I guess I should be careful. One thing I am not is a certified shepherd. I shouldn't. I had a revelation. I'm kind of. Is it wimpy to always give away the secret? Or to want to be understood. What I realized is most people are parents at a pretty middle or young age, and that makes you more mature. If you're not a parent, in other words, I think most people are comfortable if I have a hard time thinking of myself as a shepherd. I want to explain to equals, and I'm kind of it's bad if I don't keep my mouth shut. I'm not being a good shepherd. Sometimes, in other words, it's not always noble to explain everything. It seems like it, but so I can do some Moses comics or some hymns. What are we going to do? What I realize is it's good to be on the air. It's not always what I want. So let's do a Moses comic. Boy, I did some really bad ones. What if I did some more art? I have. Okay, Moses comic. Oh, wait a minute. You know what I should do? Hold on a second here. I go through a lot of soda. Okay. So, let's see if I can perform under pressure. Make something funny. Moses comic. I can make jokes about his staff. The snake staff. I've already done jokes about that. That's old. Maybe I can make some new. His staff that turns into a snake. Was that Aaron? Did Aaron have it? I guess he did. How old was Moses when he died? You know, when they have numbers in the Bible, sometimes if it says a person lived to 147, maybe that's just 47. You know, earlier today I was just saying that most people on earth are parents. And I'm kind of like, how many people would guess that if it said 147, it's just 47? Do you think parents would? I don't really know. Sometimes people are smarter than what I am. I was a little bit retarded. You know, just like what I said about being a parent. I think people, you know, some people can talk like that and talk like a parent. I'm not good at that. So, oh well. Yeah, if it says 100, when they're talking about 100,000 men, no way. So, that raises the question of how do I read the Bible? It's kind of like I assume they're parents talking, and you have to be an adult. Anyway. So it's really pretty weird because I'm not a parent, and I think I'm actually stupider than average. Something. So, talk about Moses' staff. What about it? That's kind of funny. Okay, now we get a miracle. Okay, so do we want nuclear? Boy, I was doing miracles all the time. It's not very exciting. In other words, sometimes you have to, you get a distorted sense of what you're offering. A little bit earlier, a couple hours ago, I was talking to God fluently, and about every 5 minutes I said something on par with, or just as witty as what I just said isn't very witty. Sometimes you can get a distorted sense of what you're, when you do formal offerings, it's really weird. You can kind of forget you're talking to God. What is your malfunction? If you think if you ever lose sight of talking to a person, then you can really go far. If you don't imagine God as a little old man, you can go way off course. Just look at Catholics praying. Jesus said, asking is like knocking on the door at night for a guest. Jesus said, prayer is like knocking on the door when you have a guest, knocking on the door of a neighbor when his children are in bed, when you have a guest. He said, if you knock enough, he will come and he will answer it. But you have to realize that's not a good way to start a relationship. The point is, if you ever forget you're talking to think about a little old man, because if you're talking to a bean counter, you can be really stupid. At least I've had that happen, where I'll get a notion like, wow, that's a great offering. About 15 minutes later, and I've made it formal. Like, this took 15 minutes to do this, but earlier today I was saying better stuff I was doing better conversation fluently. You know, when you step back and look at the, it's like, what, it's easy to get a distorted picture of yourself when you're doing offerings. I think it's a dud. Is it a dud? Well, sometimes it's not. God. Sometimes God doesn't cooperate with. If you're building a book of offerings, sometimes God violates the fourth wall of. I think that's the way to put it. He violates the fourth wall. So the asterisk is just it's just a placeholder. I hope that's not confusing. Maybe it is confusing, but anyway. Good. So does this have any value? So what I used to do was quality control. I would go through 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, 11. You can see somebody said I had gaps in my teeth, and then I realized they were talking about the Moses comics. That was quality control. The question is, why didn't I delete more? Why didn't I delete more? Actually, it's really kind of tragic that for these first ones, I didn't include God's response, and that's like the most valuable part. What happened was at various times I was secular, kind of. The most valuable part. I kept it hidden. Yeah, I'm in Nevada. It's 8 p.m. 8 p.m. right now. I think it works better if I just talk instead of. If you can carry on good conversation, it works as an offering. You know what? My parents used to. They go over to church sometimes, and they have this thing called venerating this Blessed Sacrament. Basically, they pray for an hour in the middle of the night. I don't know how they pray. It would be kind of amazing if everybody else was praying with good conversation, and I was the only stupid one who wasn't making good conversation. But So your prayer should be entertaining. If you go to church to spend an hour in prayer, they have this thing venerating the Blessed Sacrament. Well, that's kind of weird. Well, it's childish, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty childish. But I don't want to mess with sheep. You know, going around, how do I put this? I don't know. Don't get the wrong idea, but if a parent, if some adult walks around saying there's no Santa Claus, you know, he shouldn't be proud of himself. I'm not talking about God. What I'm talking about is Eucharist. Seems like that's just what the fuck. There's sacraments of initiation. So anyway, my parents go to, they call it venerating the Eucharist. And that's where on certain days, I think it's during Lent, they leave the little piece of the little wafer. They put it in a display, and my parents go to church and talk to it. Now, when I did that sort of thing, I didn't say it. When I talked, I didn't say anything entertaining. It would be really good if my parents did entertaining prayer. That's just as good as talking to God. Even though you're a little confused talking to me. Yeah, I hate I hate that bird. So, what was I going to say? So God said the best religion is the one with the most new vistas of understanding over a lifetime. You can kind of think of it like leveling up, where the best religion is the one you can level up the most over a lifetime. So that's kind of a double meaning, which is well, obviously, if you can keep leveling up, you go farther. So the one you go farther is the one. But anyway, on the other, but it's really about, you know, there's no rush to get rid of childhood. There's no rush to. People have a childhood, and you shouldn't always rush to get out of childhood. So anyway, so with that in mind, Catholics talk about sacraments of initiation. Now that's the baptism, the Eucharist, and confirmation. So the most new vistas of understanding, what that means is the stuff is supposed to make you think and doubt and have mysteries. And so if my parents are venerating the Eucharist, well, they're sheep. Yes. Well, they're sheep. So if you have a PC, a Dell computer from about 2004 to 2010, you can, if you're trying to install it on bare metal, if you have a PC from about 2004 to 2010, it stands a good chance of working. Do LSPCI minus V, LSPCI minus V, and what you need to do if you're installing on bare metal is you're probably going to have to enter I/O ports for the hard disk or and CD-ROM. You probably have to enter hard. Sometimes if I'm angry at a Jew, then I'll say something about the Holocaust, but I don't mean it. God's world is perfectly just. There's something about reputation. A reputation is worth more than gold. And if, like, black people, everybody thinks of crime and stuff like that, a reputation is worth more than gold. You might want to, it's in your interest to keep your niggers in line. So it's not, it sounds like it sounds like injustice if you suffer because of somebody else's crimes. Like if a black person suffers, like if a nice if the only problem with the PC from 2004 is it might not be 64-bit. It's that might not be 64-bit. If it's 64-bit, so God's world is perfectly just, and he said the Holocaust was to compact the Jews, which was a little bit of wickedness on God's part, and a little bit about making Israel a new state. They couldn't. Israel wouldn't have formed without the Holocaust. I'll do a miracle. How about that? We'll go to a random number site and pick a random Bible passage. That's why they call it TempleOS. This is not. Oops, that's not what I want to do. I'm going to the Bible. So I picked a random number, 45713. God keeps us on. We don't get too far into the woods. God corrects me if I get off the path. But now, because it is not so, he hath visited in his anger, yet he knoweth it not in great extremity. Therefore doth Job open his mouth in vain, and multiplieth his words without knowledge. Elihu also proceeded and said, Suffer me a little, and I will shew thee that I have yet to speak on God's behalf. I will fetch my knowledge from afar, and will ascribe righteousness to my Maker. For truly my words shall not be false. He that is perfect in knowledge is with thee. Behold, God is mighty, and despiseth not any. He is mighty in strength and wisdom. He preserveth not the life of the wicked, but he giveth right to the poor. So there were some wicked Jews. I asked God if the world was perfectly just. He asked if I was calling them lazy. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to imagine all those Jews being wicked. On the other hand, am I saying God's not just? That's pretty awful, I guess. Isn't that awful? That's pretty awful. You have any idea what can... I'm an electrical engineer. I was kind of too cowardly. There was one device I made. Anyway. You shouldn't be proud of yourself if you're a coward. It's not always good. A coward, for example, it wasn't about getting sued. I guess it was. No, it wasn't. You shouldn't always be proud of being a coward. So I was talking about I said there's a very famous story about an IBM corporation test engineer, and they had some tape drives, some reel-to-reel tape drives, and the test engineer made harmonic rocking, and the tape drive rocked back and forth and fell over because he had the right frequency to get it to rock back and forth. And that's an example of, well, in reality, if a malicious user could do the same thing, then I guess, yeah, you don't want it to do that. But let's say that nobody knows about it. In those days, computer memory was valuable, and are you telling me they would actually waste memory on something as absurd, as ludicrous as harmonic? A long, you would have to have it rock back and forth for a long time and be the right frequency. So this kind of reminds me of the a little bit of the iron nail in the fuse box. It's not quite the same thing. Cowardice is not always commendable. Anybody can be a coward. That anyway, so let's see what God says. God's probably got a good... Five, 4, 4, 7, 4. Five, 4, 4, 7, 4. Shall be to the workers of iniquity. The righteous shall never be removed, but the wicked shall not inhabit the earth. The mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, but the forward tongue shall be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked speaketh forwardness. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. When pride cometh, then cometh shame, but with the lowly is wisdom. The integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. So, guess what? The Pope probably says to do charity. The Bible the very first psalm Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, take or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted near streams of water. So, you're supposed to meditate on, quote, his law day and night. I think that's the way, if you were going to go venerate the Eucharist, you would be better off meditating on his law. You want to keep him interested, so I think you should. That's what, when Jesus did Martha and Mary, if you go to venerate the Eucharist, why don't you talk about the law? So, Jesus entered a village. A woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with the serving. She went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me. The Lord answered, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, and it will not be taken away from her. So Jesus liked to talk. So meditate on the law. I think that's... Now, I bet a lot of people, I bet Germans probably, they would say, it's no good to just talk. It's better to do stuff. But just spending time with God is the purpose of life. If you manage to entertain God, that's what... He's the creator of the universe. That's the highest thing you can do. Entertain God. He likes soap operas. He has a hobby of human breeding. And that requires taking care of a family and working and stuff like that. Okay, so I feel pretty. Oh, I know what I can do. Okay, watch me very carefully. I'm going to power down. So we go to my website, go to downloads. First of all, let's check my directory. My downloads directory. Okay. So my downloads directory is empty. We go to downloads. This is a 2 meg ultra small distro. Save it. Shut down. Now we're going to new virtual machine. Typical. The ISO is going to be the downloads ultra small 2 meg. 64-bit other 64-bit, 8 gig is good. And then here we're going to watch what we're going to do. We're going to get rid of the networking. There's no networking. It doesn't have sound. I don't have to do that. Processors, 8 cores. Memory, it has to be above 512. So we'll put it up to 5 gig. Finish. So it booted the ISO. Install onto hard drive. Yes. Are you inside VMware QEMU or VirtualBox? Yes. Now press a key. It's normal for it to freeze. So this is going to it's going to copy all the files onto the C, and it's going to copy all the files onto the D, two drives, the C and the D drive. It's going to copy all the files onto the C and all the files onto the D. God is laughing. Reboot, yes. Now this is my bootloader. We can boot the C or the D. Let's boot the C. They're identical. The C and the D are identical. Okay, so now what we're going to do is prove that it's 100% open source. So remember, this is a 2 meg distribution. Okay, so let's do find file, starting at root for bin. These are all the bin files. This kernel in the boot directory is for if you're making a CD-ROM, then it stores the kernel that goes onto the disk. It doesn't update your kernel in the root is the active kernel. Actually, it's not. Hold on a second. Be careful. So there's 2 binary modules that matter: compiler.bin and kernel.bin. You don't do any obj or bin or exe except these 2. So there's a command make all. I made that up just for comfort. That all that does is it's hard coded to compile the kernel and the compiler. But you never do that. I'll tell you in a second. Okay, so So if we want to prove that it's 100% open source, then let's go to the boot. Let's go to the boot directory. This is the old master boot record. That's if you you can, whatever was here before, it saves it. And you can actually, if you have grub installed with Linux, when you reboot, I can reboot real quick. Let's reboot. When you reboot, it says old. It gives you an option to boot the old boot record. So if you installed on top of grub, then if you hit 0, it would boot grub. It would enter into grub. I think it. Now UEFI is a whole new. I haven't done that. I haven't tested it in a long time. You might be careful. It used to boot grub and stuff. No guarantees. Let's cd ... So the old master boot record used to be the first block of grub on the master boot block 0. Anyway, this is master boot stage 2. This is the master boot stage 2. And then finally, kernel.bin. This is from if you're making a CD-ROM ISO, then this is where it temporarily stores the kernel. So we can get rid of this. So you'll see. So now there's 2 more kernels. There's 2 more bins. We're going to delete kernel.bin and compiler.bin. Oops. Now deleting doesn't really do anything until you overwrite the blocks on the disk. In other words, the files are still there. Anyway, that's beside the point. So there's only 2 binaries at this point. Then there's the D drive. Let's format the D drive. Okay. So if we hit Control D, the D drive is empty, and the C drive, there's no binaries except those 2. So there's no binaries. Now if we reboot it, it wouldn't boot because the kernel's been deleted. It might boot because it's still there technically, but anyway. Now I told you make all. You never do make all. That's kind of a I don't know. Maybe I should change the name and get rid of the useless one. You never do make all. You never do make all. What you do is you do make OS drive boot install. Now what this does, let's look at it. This calls it calls make all. This is for let's pretend you're making a CD-ROM. Your files are on your C drive, but your CD-ROM is a T drive, so it's going to be the C and the T. Anyway, so this calls make all, and then if it's a CD-ROM, then it moves the kernel to that boot directory that we talked about, That's if it's a CD-ROM. It moves the kernel. If it's not a CD-ROM, if it's a hard disk. If we're recompiling the hard disk, then it moves it into the root directory, and then it reads the first block of the partition, which is the boot record, and it copies my bootloader into the first block of the partition, and then it writes the first block of the partition, and that's how. So it writes it does a find file to find the kernel. First, it copies the kernel moves the kernel into the root, and then it finds the block address of the kernel. If normally you have to, most people make a fancy bootloader that searches the directories for the kernel. I don't search for the kernel. My operating system has an install script, and if you make your own install, then you can go ahead and put the block address of the kernel at this time. If you're if you're a new person, like a normal person, then you don't have the Linux won't tell you the block address. I don't think it will. And plus, you have to store it contiguously. Anyway, so make OS boot install. This recompiles, it does a make all, and then it modifies the boot record. So we're going to, you don't do a destination. Okay, so this is when the kernel boots, what is the home drive, and it's going to be C. You have to mount the drives as part of the configuration of the kernel. That's the way this works. Drive letter C. You want C and D, and so C is the first drive, and we want a probe, and we want number 1. You can just, if it has a number, you can enter it. So we just mounted the hard disk. Disk cache, use the default. Hit enter on the rest of these. Okay, so now find file /* bin *. So now we have a kernel and we have a compiler. Okay, so it should boot C drive. Okay, so we just proved that it's 100% open source. Control D. Remember, it's 2 meg, so the compiler was able to recompile in the kernel. If you do a line count report on this distro, the kernel and the compiler are compiled ahead of time, and that's 50,000. I like to call it a break between the Atom directory and the home is like 50,000 and 50,000. It's 40,000 and 40,000, I guess. But anyway, so the kernel and the compiler are compiled ahead of time as binary modules. Everything else is just in time. Everything you do should be just in time. On this 2 meg distro, we have the flight simulator. That's just in time. Okay, so let's go to the home directory, and there's a do distro. Watch this. So we can make a distribution. Let's first let's go to the kernel directory, This is to prove that you can make your own. You can make your own distros. We're going to go to the kernel directory. Let's go to. This is the startup. This is when it's during boot. It loads the compiler and then starts compiling. We're going to tell it to beep. Beep 3 times and print beep. Okay, so we have to recompile the kernel. So we say make OS boot, make OS drive, boot install, C. C is the drive. We want to mount the C and the D. We probe. We want one for the hard disk. That's all. We're not. If you wanted to use the CD-ROM, and normally when you recompile the kernel, you would give it a CD-ROM as well. Anyway, hit enter. Okay, so we just recompiled the kernel. So if we reboot and we hit 1, the new kernel has beep 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 in it. So we're gonna make a distro. Okay, so this will make an ISO file. So it recompiled using the default configuration. Okay, so now where is it? So we have my distro. How big is this? Let's see how big this is. 0x. That's 2 meg. Okay, so we made an ISO file that's 2 meg. Now we're going to exit out of here. Now we're going to mount virtual disk. We're going to move that out. We're going to get that ISO file out. Okay, so we're going to mount, and we want to fetch that ISO file. So mount disk, virtual disk file. It's in VMware, other 64-bit, and then other VMDK. And the mount point, I have a location mount VM disk. Open. And then we want the C partition. This is the C and the D. So we want the C. Normally I do all my work on the D and my C is my master. As a matter of fact, we have incomplete support of FAT32, and if you do stuff from Linux, it will corrupt the FAT32 will get corrupted. So only don't delete stuff, don't rename stuff, don't put a recycle bin on there. Be really careful. I keep a C and a D partition identical, and C is my master and D is my backup. D is also what I use for transferring. So when it comes time to transfer it out, I put it onto the D and then I mount the D. In this case, we're doing the C. I nuked the D with a format. Okay, so we mounted it. Now we're going to go, we go to the mount directory and VM disk. Okay, so all my files are here. Here's my distro. So don't move it, don't delete it, just copy it. And then we're going to go to the home downloads. I'm going to stick it in here. So I just copied it out of VMware into my downloads directory. And now we're going to mount VM disk. So we're going to unmount disk, close. Okay, so let's make a new distro, new virtual machine, typical, and we want to use the my distro, other 64-bit. Let's call this my distro. Do you remember we recompiled the kernel? Now we didn't have any networking, so it didn't call home, it didn't do anything like that. Be careful with VirtualBox because it tries to give you 64 meg. You need 512 meg or more. A lot of people don't believe that. There's a lot of people who are skeptical in a really weird way. They're like, no. Okay, so when it booted the CD-ROM, the kernel that was on the CD-ROM was had the beeps in it. So install on the hard disk, yes. Install inside of VMware, yes. Okay, yes. So we're installing the distro that I created. I'm professional. The people at OS Dev, none of them are anywhere near as professional. Reboot now, yes. So now we're going to boot the C drive. Okay, so we have this is the new kernel. We made our own distribution ISO file, and we can play the Eagle Dive. Okay, so I hope that answers all your questions. So shut this down. Delete that. Delete that. See if I got any downloads. So this is going to transfer in some log files. It's going to go to my website, get some log files. Then it's going to mount. I have a script file for mounting VMware, and this copies the log files in onto the. There's my log files. Anyway. Okay, so this is a nigger who doesn't know what this nigger doesn't know what a random number is. Okay, nigger, what possibly could a random number be? Like if you go to a website and it says random number, what do you think a random number is? You seem confused. I think he thinks this means a network connection to, I don't know. I think you would call it something other than random.org if it was a chat, okay? Maybe you want to do, now this one, you think this is a chat. The nigger thinks this is a chat. The nigger brain cannot understand what a random number is. This is quantum random numbers, vacuum fluctuations. The nigger thinks it's a chat. So we go 87273. 87273. Jesus answered them, Do ye now believe? Behold, the hour cometh, yea, it is come, that ye shall be scattered, every man to his own, and shall leave me alone. And yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. These things I have spoken to you, that ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. These words spake Jesus, and lifted up his eyes to heaven, and said, Father, the hour is come, glorify thy Son, that thy Son also may glorify thee, as thou hast given him power over all flesh, that he should give eternal life to as many as thou hast given him. And this is life eternal, that they might know that the only true God, Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent, and I have glorified thee on the earth. I have finished the work which thou gavest me to do. So the nigger, for some reason, if it says random number, the nigger thinks that's chat. You can't reason with it. If it says random number, the nigger thinks, oh, that's a chat room. So, the CIA wants to spread doubt. So he says, emergence of historical mega breaches. So if the CIA wants to spread doubt on the random numbers, then he says, there's been a bunch of breaches. And that's the way the CIA spreads doubt. But he's spitting in God's face. He's going to get fucked up. What a retard. What kind of spits in God's face? That's some serious stupidity. Takes a special kind of genius to do that. Okay, I'm going to bed. So.